Hi, Analisa 6 here with the Lady of Leisure and the Sober Curator to bring you the August 2023 astrology forecast. This is the third attempt that I am making at recording this video. I have been interrupted a couple times, and if this one doesn't pan out for me, I might just have to give up for the rest of the day. So wish me luck. I did a lot of banter at the beginning about glamming it up for Leo season, Venus retrograde, my shitty cat paintings that I've started. And at this point, I just feel like I need to dive into the astrology and not waste any time because the universe wants to keep bogarting my attempts to record this for you guys. So I'm going to share my screen. We've got the chart up and we're just going to get right in and talk about August because I'm tired of wasting time on videos that I need to keep stopping and starting over again. So let's just get right in. So welcome to August. It's August 1st, and we're just going to kind of cover a bit of what's going on today, because today is a pretty magical day. And I can't believe it's August already. It's crazy. I shared a story in my last video about how crazy it is that it's August already, and now I'm not going to share it anymore because I'm scared I'm going to get interrupted again. So today we have a full moon happening at 9 degrees of Aquarius. It already hit at 1:32 p.m. for Pacific Standard Time, but we feel the full moon over a couple days. And so here's the chart for today for where I currently am. We've got the sun opposite the moon, and then a couple other transits that we have going on today is Mars making a trine to Jupiter in Taurus. So Mars is in the mutable earth sign of Virgo, making a harmonious, easy aspect to Jupiter. However, let's find, where is Mars in Virgo? Right here. So we've got Mars at 13 degrees Virgo, making this trine to 13 degrees Jupiter. And it's interesting too, because, we have Jupiter squaring this full moon. It's not exact, but it is within 5 degrees. So we do have this T-square kind of happening between the full moon. And, I like Jupiter in Taurus. Jupiter's been in Taurus for a while already this year. And Jupiter is the planet of expansion, abundance, growth. And, a lot of times we associate Jupiter as the great benefic in traditional astrology. That's what it's associated with. And so there's a good fortune tied to Jupiter. But Jupiter is also known as a big player when it comes to the death transits of people. And so one of the things that I thought was interesting about this week in particular was just the fact that we've had a lot of people in the public eye, which is very, Sun and Leo, pass in recent days. And we've had this Jupiter square to the sun. The sun's ingressing towards this square to Jupiter. And so, it's one of those things too with this trine to Mars. Mars is considered in traditional astrology to be what's called malefic. So there's usually challenges or conflict happening with Mars, wherever Mars is passing, and it's making an aspect to Jupiter. And so a lot of times people, my friend who, has studied astrology with me for the last few years, we've talked about Jupiter because there's, a lot of times people get really excited about Jupiter transits and they're like, oh, I can't wait for this abundance and this good fortune and all these blessings. And then Jupiter hits something in the chart that is, tense or hard, maybe it makes more of a harder aspect, like a square or an inconjunct in the chart. And we actually can experience some of the hard aspects of Jupiter, which can be these cycles that are more death-like. We didn't have the planet Pluto as an astrology kind of archetype until much, much later. And so for most of astrology's history, the transits that we looked at, as a species, didn't involve the outer planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. And so even though Pluto, in modern astrology is considered to be this death symbol, there was lots of centuries without Pluto in the mix. And Jupiter was often associated with some of these big transformative endings and beginnings. And so today having a trine, Jupiter trine Mars, and also this square to this full moon, even though it's not exact, it's still an energy that we're kind of feeling, in the air, this tension. We might be feeling some of that tension around growth. And Mars also creates kind of a sense of urgency around things. And in earth elements, it's a little bit more calculated, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's calculated in a way that feels comfortable necessarily. It just kind of depends on how we ourselves are personally wired, right? So for people that have more earth dominant placements, when we have things in, the earth signs, it might feel good to us. But the people that don't have a lot of earth energy in their charts, when earth energy comes in, it might feel really challenging. It might feel very much like there's things in life that we need to get in order, which is very Virgo, Taurus. Like, how do we get things grounded and in order in a way that helps us manifest the things in our physical reality that we're working towards? How do we take more control or responsibility over our lives in a way that's practical? For some people, that's really difficult because the practical or methodical side of life isn't what you want to do. It's not where you gravitate towards, right? And so Mars in Virgo, I actually have natally. I am a Mars in Virgo person. And I'm one of those people where I get very anxious or stressed out if things around me aren't organized in a way that feels good to me. I know that my organization might not be what somebody else feels good around, but there's things that like I need to keep organized in order to feel okay in my space, okay in my mind. It's really hard for me to relax in a messy, chaotic environment. But there's some people that might see this room that I'm particularly in right now as messy and chaotic, or like the way that this art I just randomly put on the wall feels messy and chaotic. It doesn't really, like, it doesn't feng shui, right? But in the rest of my house, like, there's a method to my madness. And I think that Virgo, that's kind of how Virgo is. There needs to be a methodology to whatever it is that you have going on. And if those things aren't in order, it feels disruptive to the nervous system. And so today, on August 1st, with this Mars trine to Jupiter, we might feel like things that need to be put into order or put into some kind of practicality around us. There's a sense of urgency to do that. I really resonate with this transit in the sense that there's a lot of things with my home that we thought we would have had figured out by now, in terms of renovating and organizing and cleaning and kind of structuring out, and we're just not there yet. And it's interesting when these kinds of transits happen, it really makes me know, like, I start to feel really restless about it. I start to feel like, when is this going to happen? So that's one example, is like something like that around the organization of your home. It also can be relevant to your health. Taurus and Virgo, have a really strong connection to our bodies. Virgo rules the digestive system. Taurus rules the thyroid, the throat. And so, there might be health complications with a Mars trine to Jupiter in these signs, depending on where it's hitting in your chart, or you might feel a need to really get on top of good health. That also feels super relevant for me. I have a doctor's appointment tomorrow where I'm going over x-rays and labs in my body. And I've been also feeling like I really need to start a workout routine again, now that my body's kind of calmed down with some flare-up stuff. So those are big themes that could be kind of hitting today with this transit. Another thing that this could be also affecting is your work. So your career, your work. Taurus is kind of known to be the workhorse, the fixed energy that's kind of grounded and chugging away at the project or whatever's going on. And Virgo is all about problem solving. And so, and also being of service, like how we are of service in the world. And so there might be projects or career motivated kind of energies around organization or kind of getting things together. My husband is at work right now doing inventory, which is a very Virgo kind of energy to me, like when you're having to take stock of things and calculate what you need and organize it, those types of things. So it's a good day for intentionally doing that stuff too. Like if you feel called to do projects in your home, at work, or with yourself, your body, like that's very much supported. But because Mars is in the mix, it might not necessarily feel like good. It might feel kind of anxious or urgent, or like this needs to get done, you know, in this kind of aggressive way. And so, you know, Taurus is all about slowing down. Jupiter's not so much, but Taurus really wants us to slow down and take a more grounded approach to things. So if there's a way for you to do that while you're, you know, putting a plan into action, that's really positive thing today. We also have Mercury and Pallas Athena in Virgo too in this mix. And so there's a lot of Virgo energy happening. Pallas Athena is also making this trine to Jupiter. And so she's a part of this story. And Pallas Athena has a lot to do with wisdom. She's kind of the divine feminine archetype of Mars in her own right. There's a lot of this kind of desire to put our knowledge and our wisdom and apply it into whatever's happening, and you know, push it forward. Like Mars and Pallas Athena have kind of this assertion of needing to push things. And I think Pallas Athena in the mix is helpful because while Mars can be really reactive on its own, Pallas Athena can be action oriented, but wise and thinking about it from a wise place, not just from a reactive place. So I think that her in the mix kind of helps maybe create a buffer there. Jupiter also can be a very wisdom oriented placement too. Like we're expanding on what we already know, growing past where we've been, and using the things that we've learned in the past as kind of that, you know, push, you know, to the next place. I personally feel like that a lot in the last couple of days. Like I've had these kind of like awarenesses about experiences that I've been through in the past. And there is kind of this boundary that I feel I'm making about where I've been versus where I'm going, and being very okay with that, being very in a place of like, oh, I see this more clearly now. And maybe some of the discrepancies I've had about leaning more into this phase of my life, I'm not having as many issues with anymore. I'm starting to feel like I'm ready to move into that next place. So that could also be something that's happening for you in some area of your life. And Mercury in Virgo, it's interesting because I'm having this transit. My Mercury's in a later degree and my Mars is at 9 degrees. But I'm a Mercury, Virgo, Mars and Virgo person natally. And so I feel very much like speaking to this energy in the sky and kind of these archetypes is very much, it's like, and I'm a Leo sun. So it's very much like kind of, there's some things happening that is very much how I feel and operate on an everyday basis. And Mercury in Virgo, I really love. I mean, as somebody with it, it's the ability to be very analytical about information and organize it in your mind in a way that's very practical and solution based. Virgo really is about mitigating risk and problem solving a lot. And so Mercury and Virgo, we are kind of thinking that way. Like, how do we mitigate risk? How do we solve the problem that's in front of us? What are all of the potential options that might be accessible to us? What are all the potential outcomes of those options? And how do we pick the one that is in best support of the direction that we want to go? And it's a very observational placement, because the way that a lot of mutable energy works, like all the mutable signs, is to really see kind of big picture. And so, you know, it's hard for mutable people to be more linear and to the point. It's easier for us to see big picture and kind of say things in a few different ways for different minds and give different examples. And so that's one of the things that I think is hard for a lot of cardinal people. So if you're more on the Aries, Libra, Capricorn, Cancer side of things, those are the cardinal signs. Sometimes this mutable energy like Virgo is too much. It feels like too much is happening and there's not enough happening in a straightforward linear kind of way. But, you know, as somebody that's very mutable, it's really important sometimes for us to look at things in a big picture way versus just kind of looking at it the way it first appears to us, right? So I'm trying to think if there's an example that I could use. I'm not having any examples come to me at the moment, but I guess actually I could think about it from like a Western medicine perspective. So in Western medicine versus Eastern medicine. So I think Western medicine is a lot more cardinal and Eastern medicine is a lot more mutable. And so I'll explain kind of what I mean by that and how this Mercury Virgo, Mars Virgo, Pallas Athena Virgo energy that we're getting for quite a bit of August. I mean, I'm talking about this in relation to the transits today, but we have this energy for most of August. And so I think that it's relevant to kind of go deeper into. Western medicine has a very fragmented approach. Western culture, I should say, has a very fragmented approach to things where, if we have a stomach ache, Western medicine will hone in on the stomach as the culprit, right? It doesn't necessarily look at the whole kind of picture of the diet on a regular basis, what's happening, in the process of digesting everything, and then like maybe the rest of the organs around the stomach that contribute to the stomach's functionality, like the liver and, even our gut health, our intestinal health, the health of our thyroid, like all of those types of things can kind of be influencing what happens in another part of the body. But when we go to the doctor, oftentimes what'll happen is, oh, that hurts. Here's a medication for that. That gets rid of the symptoms. So we feel better. But then what happens? We go back and we continue the behavior that that gave us the stomach ache in the first place, right? And I will actually share an anecdote about when I was having really bad issues with my bowels. And I went to the doctor after a few years of having these issues because I didn't have insurance. And I got insurance for this brief period of time, went to the doctor, and I was diagnosed with irritable bowel syndrome. And I had Kaiser at the time, and they had me go to a class that they were teaching at Kaiser with their top gastrointestinal surgeon, which was this woman who was older. And she basically was teaching us that, a lot of what irritable bowel syndrome is related to is the brain gut communication, right? Which would be more of like our nervous system. I don't remember her using that language, but, she was talking about the brain gut communication and how it has nothing to do with what we eat. So she was like, but you do need a lot of fiber in your diet. So you should add in Metamucil, which Metamucil has ingredients in it like aspartame, which are actually very bad for you. But, Western doctors are advocating for this very corporate brand of fiber supplements. And then she was saying that we just needed to make sure that we ate when we weren't stressed out, and that we needed to carve out time and eat when we're calm. And then our bowel disorder won't act up because our brains are in this like stressed out state. And she said that, you could eat whatever you wanted and it wouldn't matter. She's like, if you have a Philly cheesesteak, it doesn't matter. If you have a smoothie, it doesn't matter. Your health with IBS is determined on your state of mind. Now, I understand what she's saying years later after learning that I have issues with nervous system regulation. It's true. Even if I eat super, super healthy, I could still have an IBS flare up because of the brain nervous system communication throughout the body that affects our digestion just as much as the food that we eat. The issue that I had with the class is that she's telling this whole class of people who are experiencing health problems to eat whatever they want as a doctor, which we know there's other problems that happen to our bowels, our stomachs, our guts with eating bad food, right? And, you can get heartburn, other kinds of issues. So it was a very odd class. And there was definitely people squinting their eyes and being like, well, I don't know if I agree that we should just be eating whatever we want, right? So it was a very Western medicine approach, very cardinal, linear approach to the problem of IBS. It's like, okay, well, this is a brain problem. So put whatever you want in your stomach because it's not going to fix the symptoms that you're having in your stomach, right? As somebody with IBS, I can say that what I eat does make a huge difference on how my bowel digests things. Doesn't change the fact that I might have an IBS flare up when I'm stressed out, sure. Eastern medicine tends to take a more holistic approach to health, which is more mutable. It tends to look at, okay, let's scale back and let's look at the full picture of your life and everything you do, mind, body, soul. Like how much sleep do you get? How much, what's your nutrition? What's your exercise? What's this? What's that? And it looks at kind of this whole picture and then starts to mitigate the risk of everything that you're doing by advising you the wholeness of the life you should be living, not just how do we prevent this one thing from happening, because we know that everything's connected. Thankfully, Western medicine is starting to move more in that direction. And so I'm starting to have more experiences with doctors that do look at all of that and are taking those things into account. But for a long time, it was very linear approach. It was just like, your head hurts, here's ibuprofen. Not, why is your head hurting? What are you doing every day? That, what are you putting, how much sugar are you eating? Those types of things. And it took a lot of us in our own lives to find those answers. I mean, thank God for documentaries and other people doing that research and putting out there, because the doctors that we were seeing weren't always giving us those resources, right? So I think that's kind of the way that I think about Mercury and Virgo, or kind of like more of this mutable energy, is that even though sometimes it's really easy or easier to in the moment be linear and direct, and sometimes that's needed, right? Like if I have a headache, I just want relief now. And so if I need to go get that ibuprofen right now, I'm really stoked that I have that option. And I'm really grateful for Western medicine for creating relief for me right now, which is very cardinal. I feel this, here's the solution. But if I'm somebody that's experiencing chronic headaches, there's obviously a bigger problem going on, and I need a bigger solution. It's not healthy to take ibuprofen every single day, every time you have a headache. It's not healthy to be in a constant state of having headaches, right? And so then we have to start looking at the bigger picture of the why. Why is this happening? And what can we do to mitigate it and prevent it from happening as frequently? Because, obviously preventing headaches forever is probably pretty hard for the average person, depending on your life. So that's a very long anecdotal kind of way of explaining, the benefits of mutable thinking in the sign of Virgo, because we get to where we're not just asking ourselves the here and now, right now. We're also asking, what's the longevity of this? How do we make this better over time? And I think that while Mercury's in Virgo, we have this opportunity to do this. And so August 1st, Mercury and Mars are in Virgo. Mercury is going to be in Virgo until September, because Mercury is actually going to be stationing retrograde on, it looks like, the 23rd. So let me make sure that I have that exactly right. Yeah, Mercury stations retrograde on the 23rd, which is the same day that the sun is actually entering Virgo as well. And then Mars is going to be in Virgo until the end of August and enters Libra on the 28th, it looks like. Let me double check. I have the universal time, and then I have the actual where I live time. It looks like it's actually entering on the 27th. So Sunday, the 27th, Mars will be entering Libra. So again, like I said, we have a lot of this Virgo energy, which is really good for that big picture, problem solving, analytical thinking. So when I do the horoscopes for each sign, I go into where this is happening for each individual sign placement, and you can look at your personal birth chart, and wherever you have Virgo in your chart, this is an opportunity for you to kind of pan out and do some of that bigger, kind of overview of things, and ask yourself, where do my actions lead me? And I know in a lot of spiritual practices, we get into this place of kind of, don't future trip and don't think about the past, because suffering lives in the future and in the past. You'll hear that a lot. And in Buddhism, it's very much like be here, be now. But one of the things about at least the future and the way that our actions are now is that creates the future that we're going to be in the present moment of. Like what we're doing now creates that, right? So if we want a good future, what we do in the here and now is what's going to lead us to that good future. Our actions today impact the future tomorrow. So part of your here and now work in a cardinal way, you should always be thinking of how do you want your here and now person in the future to be feeling. And so that's kind of the lesson, I think, for the Mercury retrograde in Virgo too, because, retrogrades are about reflect, and review and reassess. And, we have this opportunity with Mercury and Virgo to do that. And as somebody with Mercury and Virgo, my brain is constantly doing that too much, to a fault. So you can overthink things, and it can be kind of paralyzing to know what direction to go in when you're overthinking. But I think that one of the things that I do to help me not overthink so much is I get very solution based. So what is the action and what is the solution to the problem, and which one feels best to me? And I just do the one that my gut tells me to do. And, maybe I'll look back and be like, oh, well, maybe I could have done it that other way, but I believe fully in trusting your gut. So that's how I live my life. Okay, so let's get into some of the other things going on. So we enter August with Venus at 26 degrees of Leo and retrograde, and she's going to be retrograde for all of August, and stations direct at the beginning of September. And so again, like talking about retrogrades, retrogrades are a period of reassessment. So reflect, review, reassess, and Venus is the planet that represents love, money, beauty. And I will just share anecdotally that the self-image stuff, because I have this happening on my son right now in Leo, I just can't stop thinking about changes potentially that I want to make to my self-image, and it's driving me crazy. And I feel like I don't actually really want to do anything. Like, the idea of actually changing stuff feels overwhelming to me. It feels very much like the Virgo overwhelm is taking over in too many directions of how I could go. And I kind of just want to stay the same. But the Venus retrograde has me reflecting and reviewing. And one of the things that always happens to me during Venus retrograde, and I'll be curious if it happens to you, if you're watching this, let me know in the comments, but I always end up going down this memory lane of like different ways I used to look. And even if it's in a different sign, like I think Venus for me just has a very large emphasis on my personal appearance, the way I relate to my personal appearance. And in Leo, I'm definitely feeling that and how I express myself. And I feel very much like I look at photos of myself when I was younger, or when my hair color was different, or when I used to do my makeup differently, and I start kind of getting nostalgic, and I'm like, should I start doing that again? Should I go back to that hairstyle? And it's almost kind of obsessive, the amount that I think about it, and it's annoying. Like, it's super annoying. But I also really enjoy looking back at photos of the past, and then I remember this is an opportunity to create that in the present, because I know that I'll be doing that about this present moment in the future. So it kind of ties back to that, what I was talking about, where it's like, make sure that what you do today is something that you will be grateful you did for the future, and that you can look back on and be like, I'm really glad that I did that back then, because it led me to where I'm at now, right? Like those kinds of choices. So I'm trying to imagine myself in the future looking back and being grateful for what I did in the past, because I have that. I look back at my late 20s with that, where I'm so grateful for so many choices that I made because of where it set me up now, in so many ways. So I think that the Venus retrograde is a good opportunity for us to think about that stuff. But one of the things about retrogrades is that if we take action like in a reactive way, so if I'm sitting here thinking about changing all these things about myself in a nostalgic reactive way, once the retrograde period is over, I might look back and be like, wow, I really didn't need to do that, and feel very emotional. But it can also be very fun. Like, it can be a very fun time to reinvent yourself. There's the re's again. But usually it's advised during retrogrades like this to not reinvent yourself. It's like a good time to think about it. So, during the month of August, if you're feeling inclined to make a big change with your appearance or in a relationship, because we haven't even gotten into the relationship aspect of Venus yet. But if you're feeling that push for change, this is a good time to think about it, talk about it, write about it, have a Pinterest board about it, vision board it, but not necessarily take the action. It's kind of like the way Virgo's really good at like overlooking everything and trying to mitigate or plan. It's such a good time to do that. It's a great time to kind of envision everything, but not necessarily to do it. However, you might still feel inclined during this retrograde with Venus to do it anyways. I think at the beginning of the year, I watch Chris Brennan's astrology forecasts occasionally. I have a lot of respect for him as an astrologer. He's amazing. And the people that he has on his show are always really amazing and fun to listen to. And I don't watch it all the time because I like to keep my own my own intuition and breakdown of the forecast. I don't really want other people kind of influencing my own ways that I delineate, the information, because I feel like that's kind of part of being an astrologer is you do it yourself, you have your own outlook, things like that. But I do really like when there's something somebody says from something I did watch or listen to that really sticks with me. I do like to share it. So I would recommend watching his, it's like a 4-hour long thing, but it was at the beginning of the year. And they were talking about this Venus retrograde and just kind of sharing some of the things that can come up in relationships and how it can be a really rocky time for some relationships in terms of seeing if you're still feeling the same way about each other that you were in the past, or kind of going through, cycles with somebody of having to really kind of make or break, those kinds of things. And I thought it was an interesting synopsis of this particular Venus retrograde in Leo. I feel more that way about Venus retrograde in signs like Scorpio. But Venus retrograde in Leo, I get, because Leo has a lot to do with romance and how we like to be romanced and the attention that we get or feel like we deserve from people like friends or romantic partners, things like that. And Leo is a sign where the journey for Leo, the lesson for Leo a lot of times is how do we feel whole and good about ourselves and loved without the applause or the validation from the outside world, from other people. And so Venus in Leo retrograde could be a lot about this internal journey of how do we love and accept ourselves from ourselves, not just trying to desire that attention from our partner, our friends, or our audience, whether that's on social media or if you're a performer or a musician. Like, how do you fill that cup yourself, not just seeking it outside of the self, if that makes sense. In a relationship, though, it's kind of an interesting thing because on one hand, obviously it's important that even if we're partnered with somebody, we have the ability to show up for ourselves and love ourselves, and we're not constantly in this codependent seekingness with somebody else. But with that said, when we're in a relationship with another person, we do kind of, want some level of admiration or attention or validation from our partner occasionally, but if you're a Leo dominant person, you probably seek that daily. That's probably something that you want to hear on a regular basis, is how loved you are, how beautiful you are, how great you are. And as a Leo woman, and my husband being Leo rising, I would say that we are very much into constantly showing our admiration for each other verbally, physically. It's a part of our love language, right? And if that's something that you feel like you're all of a sudden reflecting on in a relationship, whether you're a Leo person or not, but it's like your intimacy or the way that you're romanced or the attention that you get from your partner is something that you're reflecting on and trying to kind of figure out what is reasonable, like what's a reasonable amount to want or desire from your partner or give to your partner, and maybe what is different than what they want versus what you want. And does the relationship need to evolve or be worked on when it comes to how you romance or give each other attention? One of the things that I learned about in a more I don't want to say clinical, but I guess clinical way, just from reading articles about it, that was something that I didn't know there was a term for, was hyper independence. And there's a whole kind of field of psychology happening around people that have hyper independence. And it's kind of this view on this kind of part of culture where we're raised, a lot of women, I think, are raised this way in our kind of modern day culture, to not need anybody, to be in this hyper independent stance. Like, Cher's got her quote, I don't need a rich man, I am a rich man, that kind of thing. There's this, and I get it. Like I definitely have been a hyper independent person in my head, even though I've been married for a long time and with somebody for a long time. I am a very codependent person, but I have a hyper independence brain in pretty much every other area of my life. It was really interesting to kind of read about some of the downfalls of that mentality, because humans, we're social creatures. We are creatures that tend to, if we don't have a certain level of connection with other humans, there have been studies done that show that a certain level of mental illness develops in people when they completely isolate. And so there's an interesting kind of thing with that to me, with the Venus and Leo kind of story, because I don't think Leo wants to be hyper independent, but I think Leo has a lot of those tendencies. And I think that Leo is kind of in this place of, how do I honor myself, and how do I, connect with people and share myself while also not losing myself and not losing my own autonomy within that kind of need for validation or connection with people in this more heart-centered way. So I think Venus retrograde could also be bringing up some of those questions for us. And, issues around hyper independence or codependence could be kind of one of those things that we're navigating as Venus is moving through this retrograde in Leo. And I definitely feel like that's been coming up for me quite a bit. So those are themes, those are things to think about. And as the sun's moving towards that square to Jupiter, we might be feeling some of that tension to grow past where some of these ideas we've had have been. Leo and Taurus are both very fixed energies, so they're stubborn, like they don't necessarily want to change. And when we have these squares, that tension between them happens, where we might be kind of forced to change or grow a little bit. That friction is really intense, but it's also where manifestation happens in the fixed square. So it's a powerful time to be kind of envisioning what it is that you want to create for yourself moving forward. And then we're in that reflect, review kind of process. And then this full moon happening today, we didn't even talk about the Mercury opposite to Saturn happening today. There's a lot happening at the start of August today, and I feel like I could be talking forever about it. I'm gonna have to move through the rest of the month a little bit faster here, but so this full moon is happening at 9 degrees, in Aquarius, and Aquarius is the opposite sign of Leo. And so we talk about Leo kind of needing this validation, needing to share, needing to kind of be this expression of self and creative energy. And Aquarius is the opposite in the fixed air sign of Aquarius, that has to do with our connection to community, how we advocate for others, and our relationship to the group or friends. So while Leo can be a little bit hyper independent and codependent, Aquarius can be very focused on the group and the community kind of thought process. And so during this full moon, we might be in this period of reflecting on our community, reflecting on our friends, reflecting on how we feel in the friend group or in society, and whether or not we feel accepted by society, whether or not we agree with where we've aligned ourselves in society. And, Aquarius is said to be the sign that represents change too, cultural shifts and cultural change. And so if we feel this need to kind of shift or grow beyond, with some of that, it's, we've got that square happening to Jupiter, grow beyond where we've been in our communities or in the way that we're relating to society or the whole. That's also a big theme. And, of course, when I get into the horoscopes, we'll talk about where that hits more for individuals. And then Saturn is opposite Mercury today, or Mercury is opposite Saturn. So we've got a mutable opposition with the Virgo Pisces polarity. So Mercury is at 5 degrees and Saturn is at 5 degrees. And so this energy can happen in a few ways. It depends on kind of how we're relating to self, obviously, and what we're leaning into. But Saturn transits especially in a sign like Pisces, really tend to lend towards depression and kind of more of this sluggish, like fog kind of feeling. And it can kind of put a little bit of a block or damper on this Mercury energy. And so if you're feeling like you're trying to get things organized or you're trying to be productive, but there's a little bit of this fog or sluggishness that you're having to move through, that could be a big part of the Saturn influence. It's also an energy that can amplify our dreams and our creative energy having the Piscean Virgo axis. And so it's a positive time to channel some of that energy into something artistic or creative. But it's also a time where we might need to really work on getting grounded in the body and finding ways to combat some of maybe those depressive feelings that's positive for us. I kind of wish that I had been more aware that this transit was going on during this full moon, because it would have made a lot more sense to me why I've been feeling the way that I've been feeling. We have a lot of atmospheric pressure stuff going on because there's a fire where I live, a few hours away, but we're getting the pollution from it. And then we've had a huge storm roll in, and I'm really sensitive to the altitude and the atmospheric pressure where I live. And so my vertigo gets worse. I feel in a daze. I feel very fatigued. I feel very out of it. And my health issues kind of exacerbate that. And seeing that we have this opposition now, I'm kind of okay, that makes sense why I've been feeling more kind of woozy, and getting a start on these videos was really hard today. Yeah, if you're just kind of feeling like you're a little bit bleh, in that way, but it is really positive for creativity. It can be, but again, we might not be feeling as much of a spark with that as we are hoping, but this Mars to Jupiter energy might actually help liven that up a little bit. I think that's why I didn't give up on doing horoscopes completely today, was thanks to this Mars Jupiter trine. That's just all talking about August 1st. And I feel like I've already been talking for an hour. So that's crazy. So let's go ahead and get into the rest of the week. The rest of the week, the only other major transit we have for the first week of August is the sun is going to make that exact square to Jupiter. And that's happening at 5:03 p.m. Pacific time on August 6th. And so again, like I said, Jupiter transits, when they're in a hard aspect, can be a big symbol of something ending. We can also, like I said, we're with this Venus energy, we might be really examining who we are and how we express ourselves. And Jupiter squaring the sun is going to bring more of that up for us. How do we grow beyond where we've been, who we are? How do we push things forward? On the 8th, it looks like we have our last quarter moon in Taurus at 15 degrees. And that moon is going to be making all kinds of aspects throughout the day. I'm not going to talk about it a ton, but last quarter moons happen after a full moon, and they have another kind of symbology of releasing and letting go, similar to things that we can do during the full moon. We can manifest during a full moon, or we can do a big, release, let go. And the last quarter is another opportunity for us to do a release or a let go. And, this moon is going to be making a conjunction to Jupiter. It's going to be making a trine to that Mars in Virgo. It's also going to be making a conjunction to Uranus in Taurus. And it's going to be squaring that Venus in Leo. And so there's, I guess I could move this here. Let's get to the 8th. So this moon is going to be a pretty intense, it's going to be an intense day on the 8th, on Tuesday, so a week from today. And, we might be feeling a little bit like we're ready to, I was talking about, for me, how I've been contemplating changing my self-image and, letting go of maybe a way I've been expressing myself. This is a day where, any of us that have been kind of feeling called to change something or release something or let something go in some way, we might be really feeling called to do that. But Taurus has a hard time with that. The moon's going to be in Taurus. So we might feel some resistance towards wanting to let things go, even if it's something that we know needs to happen when it comes to our identity or our sense of self. The moon in Taurus is one of my favorite placements because the moon is exalted in Taurus, and it's just a really good feeling energy. It's a great day to nurture yourself and kind of do things that bring a sense of ease and comfort to your body and mind. Comfort foods, nurturing environments that kind of give you a sense of comfort. It's positive for you to lean into that. Let's see, the next transit that we have going on is the next day, where we're going to have on August 9th, Venus in Leo is going to make a square to Uranus, and Mercury is going to be trining Jupiter exact on this day as well. And this is a big day to have after this last quarter moon, because if you have been in any kind of place with yourself, a friend, or a relationship, and you feel like there's a need for change in that relationship dynamic, this is a day where that could be happening very much abruptly. Uranus, whenever Uranus is involved in a transit, there's surprises or sudden things that happen that we weren't expecting. And Venus is that, relationship planet, and Venus is retrograde. And so if you've been having a rocky friendship or a rocky relationship, this is a day where things could come to a head for sure. Mercury trining Jupiter. Mercury is that planet that rules communication. Jupiter rules expansion and growth. There's a lot of opportunity for constructive conversations, but there's also a lot of opportunity for reactions. So I feel like this day I'm nervous about for a lot of people, including myself, just in the sense that, it's hitting me in my chart in a pretty direct way on some of my stuff that I've got going on. But, I think that it's easy to look at some of these transits coming up and get distressed, like, is something going to happen in my relationship? Is something going to happen with a friend? And to worry about it. But a lot of times we already know, like, we already kind of know in our hearts that there's things that need to be talked about or figured out. And these transits are just kind of there to help us along in life. I feel like it's not necessarily like they cause what happens in our life. It's like we're already headed that way, and then they create the environment that allows for us to have the stage to get it all out and work through it. So, it's possible that during this week, of the 7th, that we're having to have some difficult conversations with people, loved ones in our lives, friends, or partners. So, just know it's coming, know that it's there to help you grow and evolve and make things better, stronger in your relationships with others. And there's definitely opportunity for resolution having the Mercury trine to Jupiter. But, for some people, if you feel like your relationship is on the rocks and it's time to move on, this might be the week where that happens. You decide to break up with somebody or get divorced, or, things need to change. On the flip side, if you're single and there's a new relationship budding and you're on the fence about whether or not it's time for you guys to take the next step, the environment might make itself so for that conversation to happen, right? Something might happen that is abrupt, and then it forces you to have that conversation for that next step in the relationship. We have another pretty intense transit happening a few days later on the 11th. So on August 11th, Chiron, the planetoid that represents the wounded healer that's been transiting in Aries for a while now, is going to be making a hard aspect to Mars in Virgo. And so it's interesting because it's like we have these transits that start earlier on in the week on Tuesday and Wednesday that bring up, issues in a relationship or with a friend or just some kind of problem that we're going through. And even with Venus, it could be ourselves. Venus has to do with relationships predominantly, but relationship to self can also be a theme, right? And then we tend to project our own insecurities onto other people, which can then create, tension in our relationships with other people. The 1st and the 7th house have that polarity for a reason. The relationship to self often impacts our relationships to others. So there's a lot coming up for us, around that impacts how we're dealing with other people. And then after we have kind of that all come to our awareness, Mars makes this in conjunct to Chiron, and Chiron being that wound, it's in that sign of Aries, which is the self, it's the identity. And Mars in Virgo, it's again that analytical problem solver that's kind of reactionary, but we have Mercury and Pallas Athena here still kind of hopefully helping us use some of the wisdom that we've gained along the way to make more practical, rational choices around how we heal and move forward from the feelings that we've been experiencing. Then the next day on the 12th, the story continues. We have the sun making a trine to that Chiron. And so, the sun in Leo trining Chiron in Aries, we might be feeling insecure. We might be feeling some of our wounds around identity, self-expression coming out, and Venus is still in retrograde. She's part of this, like she's also making this trine to Chiron. So it's intense. I mean, this is a pretty intense week, and I'm definitely not looking forward to how my self-esteem has already been so low with so many of these transits. I've already been I'm super like, do I need to go back to having dark hair? Do I you know, do I like how I'm doing my makeup? Do I want to change the shape of my eyebrows? It's also so superficial, but the deeper part of it is that I'm going through health problems and not really able to do the things with my life that I've been wanting to do that are making me feel insecure about myself. And then I project it onto my image, which really is not what it's all about. It's really how I feel deep down inside about other things. So I think that I'm sharing my anecdotes as an example of how this stuff can kind of manifest for us. But of course, it'll happen for us all differently wherever this is hitting in our charts. I'm moving around so much because my bulldog is under the table and I am massaging his back. So wondering what I am doing moving around. I am massaging my dog. It's also how I get him to chill out without, you know, having me give him all the attention. So on the 13th, the story continues where the Sun and Venus make a conjunction. And I'm not exactly sure when this happened last before she stationed retrograde. I don't think this happened at all, actually, because the Sun wasn't in Leo. Yeah, so I was thinking maybe we had a past where she did something like this before, but no, because we were, brain fart on my part. But yeah, so the Sun and Venus are going to make a combustion in the sky, Venus cazimi, I guess, and it's retrograde. So again, like Venus wants resolution. She wants to heal things. She wants us to work into love and acceptance. And, you know, this is where that self-validation comes through, the opportunity to kind of self-heal or self-accept. But with her retrograde, we might still be kind of up against, you know, tackling some of those insecurities. And that Chiron trine is still going to be influencing us. So there's a lot going on, but I actually am I think this is a great opportunity for healing. I think that there's a lot of positive elements to this energy, even though it's retrograde, even though there's some wounds getting triggered. There's so much opportunity for us to grow and heal and love ourselves and move on and tune into our creative self-expression. Those are choices that we have to make, obviously. Like a lot of how we choose to interact with life is how these things manifest. So if you're choosing to stay in kind of a negative mindset around yourself, you're probably going to feel more of the wounded retrograde aspects of this. But if you're choosing to do the work and recognize the things and do kind of some of the exercises around how we can heal and accept ourselves, then you might be feeling more into the healing aspects of these transits for sure. Okay, so after that week, we move into the 14th of August. So this is now, looks like the third week, right? We're getting into, and let me make sure I'm looking at the right thing here. So Venus is going to make a trine to Chiron on the 14th, which we already kind of talked about. But again, like Venus has a connection to relationships too. So autonomy in relationships with the Leo Aries axis, you know, how do we love ourselves without seeking that acceptance from just other people or our partner, right? I think that we become more attractive and more lovable when we're not desperate for attention or acceptance from another person. I've watched this in my marriage. I'm going to be very vulnerable right now, but there's times in my marriage where I've been really like solid in my autonomy and my self-love. And it doesn't change how much I love my husband or what I want from my husband, but it's just like an added bonus where I feel very like, oh, it's so great to have a partner that cares about me, but I'm good with my self-love too, right? Like, I don't necessarily feel like I would have to be married to feel accepted. Like, I'm good no matter what. That's me when I'm doing really well in myself. And I feel like that's really attractive to my partner. I feel like when I'm kind of just off in my own little world, doing my own thing, my partner loves to come and distract me and be all up in my business. And I'm kind of like, hey, I'm busy right now, you know? And then the times when I'm feeling more maybe insecure or more needy, and I'm kind of like going up to him and kind of being like, give me love, give me affection, I want you. It kind of turns into this like Peg and Al Bundy dynamic, which I hated when I was a kid. When I'd watch that show, I was like, ew, I never want to end up like those people. But then I kind of get it. You know, it's like when the other person has more of like this desperate energy of like, give me attention, while the other person's trying to do something or is kind of autonomously in their own world. It's very like, it feels kind of like a little fly buzzing around, you know, where you're like, I love you, I care about you, but like, damn, you know. So I've noticed, like, I've seen energy frequencies play out in different ways in my marriage, where it's like the more aloof and kind of solid and content and self-oriented and self-loving I am, the more attractive I kind of become. And when I'm more needy or insecure or feeling bad or desperate for affection or love, the more my partner's kind of like, geez, that's a lot, you know? And so I think that it's just an interesting thing. And I think that Venus in Leo trining Chiron could kind of bring up maybe that dynamic a little bit, where how do we give ourselves enough autonomously, but also get what we need in our relationship and have it be balanced for both people, have it be something that we both are wanting to give, wanting to receive, and there's kind of this like integrated self, so that it's never too much or not enough or imbalanced, if that makes sense. And it's different for every relationship. When I talk to my friends about their relationships, we're all so different with what is good for us. You know, I mean, if I'm being a Leo, like what I need is up here compared to another sign. You know, I think an Aquarius dominant person tends to want more from their community than their relationship. Even though they love being in a relationship, they're very like, let's go hang out with all the friends. And then I'm with an Aries, so it's very much like, let's be alone and away from everybody. It's less like, let's go be out in the public. Like, everybody's needs are different, right? Those are just some examples. On the 15th, the sun is going to square Uranus. And so Uranus, you know, is an interesting planet in the sense that it's associated with sudden change. And that change can sometimes be bad, and sometimes it can be exciting and fun and nuanced. And, you know, the square energy is never really considered to be good. It's always considered to be tense and hard. But again, things come out of it sometimes that are very beneficial or positive, depending on how, you know, how and what it is. The sun is our identity, our expression of self. So again, with this Venus retrograde and where it's been with the sun squaring Uranus, we're also maybe inclined to want to do a drastic change, or we might experience something that drastically changes us, whether or not that's something that we wanted or intended. So again, like it's one of those weeks where surprise, there's an element of surprise, an element of, okay, like this is happening. Also, by the 15th, we are in that Mercury retrograde shadow period. So the shadow period really kind of starts to, you know, hit us around this time, depending on what amount of degrees or, you know, how I think that this I'm just reading kind of the notes in this little ephemeris, because sometimes the way the calculations that I use sometimes are a little bit different than what they say in here, just for my own practice. I'm a very sensitive person to shadow periods, so I tend to give a little bit more time than some other people do. This book says that the shadow period does start on Tuesday. So actually me and the book are in sync. I just realized, because they put a note at the top, but I was talking about it before I saw that. But yeah, so we are in the shadow period starting on the 15th. And so that kind of reflect, review, and feeling kind of like, you know, are the plans that we have in place going to stay the same? We might start to feel complications with certain things by then. This is also the day before the new moon that we have in Leo on the 16th. So we're all also in a balsamic phase of the moon on the 15th, which is also very intense. Like, it feels very introverted, introspective, and we get kind of like this with the outside world. But because it's still, we've got all this Leo energy, it's a weird dichotomy to be in, because Leo is still kind of this showboat, and then we have this introverted energy. So there's kind of this need to, again, internalize some of those needs and figure out how do we give that to ourselves without necessarily seeking it from the outside. So if we skip forward to the new moon on the 16th, it's going to hit at 23 degrees of Leo And it says that that new moon is exact on at 2:38 a.m. And it's also the moon stationing void, of course, at that same time. So that's kind of interesting as well. So another aspect that we have going on this day is Mars in Virgo is going to make a trine to Uranus. I'm really not a fan of Mars Uranus transits. It's really easy to hurt yourself, be overly reactive, overly irritable, things like that. This is my birthday week, so I'm a little bummed. I'm also supposed to go out of town on this day, which now I'm actually thinking I need to change my plans. So I'm gonna check in with my friend and see if we can change our plans, because I don't want to get in a car accident or have anything stupid happen. Yeah, I mean, obviously it affects everyone differently, but we also have a Mercury in Virgo aspect to Chiron in Aries, and it's a hard aspect. It's an inconjunct. So that Mercury Virgo in conjunct to Chiron, difficulties in communication, difficulties with travel, Mars trining Uranus, surprises with that. I don't know if I really want to leave the house on this day. It's a really good day to just kind of hunker in and slow down. All right, so then let's look and see what else is happening for that week. The only other transit that we have going on is on Sunday the 20th, we have the sun making an inconjunct to Neptune. So again, it's a little bit of a harder aspect, sun at 27 degrees and Neptune at 27 degrees. And so it's interesting. I mean, I kind of enjoy Neptune transits in the sense that I think that they really elevate our ability to be creative. So if you're an artist or a musician, this is kind of a positive time to really lean into Neptunian energy in a creative way. But it also is very ungrounding and can feel like we're disassociating from reality in a way that can sometimes feel unhealthy. We can be more prone to depression or existential dread, things like that. That's why leaning into the positive aspects like creativity, spiritual practices, things like that is positive in that way. So I feel like this would be a good day for me to do some painting if I think about it. All right, so then let's get into this fourth week here. It's the last full week that we have of August. The sun is going to make an inconjunct to Pluto in Capricorn on the 21st. And, again, we might be feeling like there's a deep need for transformation of self. August is such an interesting month transit-wise in the sense that there is a deep change taking place within all of us individually, and then how we're relating to relationships with other people and feeling this giant shift happening. I totally feel this in terms of, I do, like I was saying at the beginning of this video, there's like this boundary that I feel like I'm creating within myself that years ago I would have had a hard time with reconciling. And now I'm getting to a point where I just have a certain level of life experience that it's like I don't have the issues with it that I had years ago, where I really value being of service to people and animals and giving. Like that's something that in my family is a value. And I feel like I was taught in a way that that's really important. But I think that I was taught in a way that created more of a martyrdom situation without meaning to. I wouldn't say that I've intentionally tried to be a martyr, because I don't, in my brain, agree that that's my intention or who I am in any way. But I think that I inadvertently burnt myself out and have a lot of health problems from the amount of being of service that I was doing. And so I'm getting to a point where what I consider more selfish that I've had issues with in the past, where I'm like, I don't want to be that type of person. I'm starting to not even see it that way. I'm starting to see it as just like survival. Like I'm like, I have to preserve a certain level of self in order to just function. Like my health problems really require my nervous system to be in a certain state in order to just be not in pain. I mean, even doing these videos, like my whole body starts to flare up. So yeah, it's been kind of an interesting thing for me. And I think that this kind of segue with August, we're all kind of in the state collectively where we're examining who we are in relation to others, who we are in relation to the collective, and how are we creating this future for ourselves where we are authentic to what we want to do and put forth moving forward. So that Pluto to the sun, you know, we tend to go through a deep transformation process of self when that aspect is happening. The next day on Tuesday, we have Venus squaring Jupiter. And then we have Mars making an opposition to Neptune. Again, this is really intense energy for us. I mean, August is an intense month. We have just kind of this, I think that it would be really easy to blow things out of proportion this month and to kind of have more extreme reactions to things and then look back on it and go, wow, I could have toned it down a bit. Leo is all about drama. So there's a lot of drama in the air for this month for sure. And I would say Tuesday, the 22nd feels like a high drama day. I hope that it's just happening on my TV because I don't need that in my life. So yeah, but again, you know, it's there kind of challenging us to grow past where we've been, look at things maybe in a bigger scope. We might be kind of examining our lives, you know, in this very observational way and wanting to make drastic change, but it might not be the right time with the retrograde energy again, because we're still in that little pre-retrograde shadow. So, you know, I feel like we need to tread lightly and just be in a very open-minded place in knowing that the way we feel in this moment might be very intense, and we might be feeling like we need to make a lot of very big life choices, but we don't necessarily need to do that. We might need to just sit on it for a little bit and just think about, do that Mercury and Virgo thing where we just think about all the potentials and try to mitigate the risk before taking action. Because on the 23rd, we're going to have Virgo season starting. So happy birthday to all the Virgos in August. And then Mercury is going to be stationing retrograde on that day as well. And that's going to be happening at 21 degrees of Virgo. So you can see, cool, right on my Mercury placement. Yay. Oh man, this month feels like a attack on me, honestly. I'm taking it very personally without meaning to. So yeah, Mercury is going to be retrograde until September 15th, and it'll station direct around then. And so we have a nice window of that. So again, I already talked about all this at the beginning of the video, but that's when it starts. On the 21st, I'm sorry, the 24th, we have our first quarter moon in Sagittarius, and that's happening at 1 degree. This is a time where it's good to kind of set intentions and plant seeds towards things that we're wanting to cultivate over the next couple of weeks. And then we also have Mars making a trine to Pluto. So again, we might be in this position where we feel reactive and like there's a lot of change that needs to take place right now. It doesn't. It's just a time. I mean, it might just be happening to us too. That's the other thing, right? Like there might be things in life that we're having to just react towards because it's happening. But we need to make sure that we try to slow down and see things from a more broad perspective as best we can. Still, you know, maybe, like I said, take the ibuprofen now, put the Band-Aid on it for now, but then reassess, why is this happening? You know, what can I do in the broader scope to mitigate future potential problems from happening? And sometimes we can't, you know, I mean, if you are driving and you get stuck in traffic, it's like, sure, maybe you could have left earlier, maybe you could have done this, maybe you could have done that, but it just is what it is, right? What you can control is how you respond to it. So a lot of times when I'm stuck in traffic, I'll call somebody and just talk on the phone because I don't even really think about it. I'll listen to a podcast, things like that. So we have this opportunity for us to be in situations that might be frustrating, and we might want to have big, explosive, or, you know, ungrounded reactions, but this is an opportunity for us to practice how we meet the moment, you know, as they say, you know, how do we work on regulating our nervous system when things are not going our way? That has been a big lesson for me. Our next big day of transits happens on the 27th of August, where we have the sun in opposition to Saturn. Mars is going to be entering Libra that day as well. So Mars will be leaving Virgo. Mars is in detriment in Libra because it's the ruler of Aries. And so this is an area that this is one of my least favorite placements for Mars. Mars in Libra is a very tit for tat kind of energy. Well, you did this, so I did that. Or I did this and you blah, 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 blah. It's very kind of like balancing the scales in a very aggressive or passive aggressive kind of way. Again, though, you know, Mars in Libra is fighting for fairness, fighting for justice, advocating for things to be balanced. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you're hijacking a conversation or an experience of somebody else without validating it, which is something that Mars and Libra can do, it can create a lot of ungrounded kind of energy in your relationships, which hopefully you just were working through over the first half of the month. And hopefully maybe you're getting some of the benefits of Mars and Libra that are more of a balanced kind of playing field than maybe what you were feeling before. It also depends on where it's hitting in your personal birth chart. Mars is going to be in Libra through all of September and won't enter Scorpio until October. Sun opposite Saturn, this can lend towards depression and kind of some of those existentially blown out kind of, you know, feelings that aren't necessarily great. We might be feeling really sluggish and kind of just bleh about things with the Pisces, Virgo kind of polarity. But it's a good opportunity to kind of do some of the deeper spiritual work on maybe why those things are happening in that way. Like, what is your depression stemming from? One of the things that I was taught in therapy and also some of the spiritual practices that have been kind of shared with me over the years is doing things like a mandala of your life. And I love astrology because astrology essentially is that. It's a mandala of your life. And if you were to go through all of the things in your life that you do that are things you have to do, but also things of value. So if you're looking at your work, your home, day-to-day stuff, like your routines, your creative life, your romantic life, your family life, you know, your diet and exercise, like you look at all of it. And then you do little percentages of how much of those things are getting attention, essentially. And sometimes when we're depressed, it's because there's a whole maybe area of that mandala that's not getting our attention. And so we're imbalanced, essentially. There's parts of our lives that we're really attentive to, and then there's other parts that are not. And sometimes it's just about integrating more of the parts that are lacking that helps you kind of pull you out of some of the ways that you feel imbalanced in your life. And that's something that's been really helpful for me. So if I start getting really depressed, I start kind of asking like, well, what have I not been doing? You know, and a lot of times I can see really honestly, like, oh, I haven't been creative in weeks, or I haven't exercised in days, or, you know, I haven't been outside to the extent that I know I like to be outside. And if I just go do a couple of those things in a few days, my mood drastically improves. Even doing my hair and makeup, like today when I was getting ready for this video and putting makeup and hair, like this morning I was like, it sounds so annoying to have to do that for these videos. I wish that I didn't want to be so presentable for these videos sometimes. But then once I was in the act of doing it, of beautifying myself or doing those rituals, I felt myself mentally feel better. Like I wasn't as kind of as I felt when I first woke up. So and I feel that way when I exercise. I feel that way when I wake up early and go for a hike. I love to make juice. I'm a juicer. And so juicing, you know, a lot of early on in my juicing, I felt like juicing was really messy and time consuming. And so I would kind of get a little like, I don't feel like doing it. But then when I'm in the moment doing it, I feel this kind of euphoric happiness. And I started to notice that over and over and over again, every time I would do it, I would kind of be in this state of, I actually really enjoy this. So I don't know why I'm acting so resistant towards it, because it's actually a really fun thing to do. And it's actually not that messy now that I have a dishwasher. It's really easy to clean. So my whole mindset around it changed because the reality was that I actually was really enjoying it, and it makes me feel physically really good. So those are things that I've been kind of working on that I think that, you know, the sun opposite Saturn stuff, where we get kind of like in this sluggish, mundane depression around the things that maybe we're not feeling satisfied by. This is an opportunity for you to do that assessment and integrate more of the things that would help you feel more fulfilled in life. And then if we go forward on the 28th of August, Uranus is going to be stationing retrograde in Taurus, and it looks like that's happening at 23 degrees, and Uranus will be retrograde in Taurus until January. So Uranus joins the retrograde party, and then it looks like our next big transit doesn't happen until the 30th on Wednesday. we will have a second full moon of August. So we're going to have a full moon in Pisces at 7 degrees of Pisces. And Mercury is also going to be making a hard aspect to Chiron. So again, full moons are an opportunity for us to manifest or release and let go energy that's no longer serving us. Virgo is the mutable earth sign that represents our digestion, our connection to being of service in the physical world, our relationship to daily routine, our health, our ability to analytically and practically organize information in all things that are material. And then Pisces is the opposite, the mutable water sign, which represents our connection to source energy, spirituality, the ethereal, the imaginal, the imagination, art. It's also got a connection to alcohol and, escapism through substances. And so I personally love a good full moon in Pisces. I am a full moon Pisces baby because I was born a couple days after the full moon in Aquarius. So I still have that kind of signature, even though I'm a Leo sun. And it's such a dreamy, ethereal energy. And it's a great time to do things that are artistic, creative, spiritual, all of the things. I really feel like Lana Del Rey's music very much vibes like Piscean full moon energy. And I really enjoy listening to Lana Del Rey when this type of this frequency is in the air. It just has that like moody, dreamy kind of feeling. When I first heard, I was late to the Lana Del Rey whole thing. Like I wasn't listening to new music, and it was like a few friends of mine that were really into her. And so I like years later checked her out, and I just was like automatically fell in love with a bunch of her stuff. There's some songs of hers that I could do without, but for the most part, like I really am a fan. And that Born to Die album and the Born to Die music video and the Born to Die song, I just felt like encapsulated so much of my Piscean energy. I was just like, oh my gosh, this is so Pisces. So whenever I'm talking about some of the Piscean stuff, that song and that music video just kind of goes and like pops into my head right away. So that's kind of how I'm feeling about this day. But it's also a really nice time to kind of call in the relationship that you have to spirituality and kind of what is it, and how do you connect to those parts of yourself in a healthy way, versus seeking to connect to it in a way that's self-destructive. And Mercury in conjunct Chiron might bring up some wounds around how we communicate, areas of insecurities around how we process communication or information. We might have to find more creative ways of relating to self or communicating ourselves with others. I don't feel good. Doing this video really took it out of me, and I'm not feeling good at all. So I need to stop, and this is as good as it's going to get for y'all. And I'm probably not going to get the horoscopes up until later in the week. My health, I'm really struggling with it right now. And so I have a doctor's appointment tomorrow. Hopefully I'll be getting some answers. Hopefully I'm just deficient in a bunch of things and I can just pump a bunch of vitamins into my body and be like, I feel so much better. Fingers crossed. I don't know. Happy August. I wish you all luck. This is going to be an intense month and probably a very transformative, life-changing month for a lot of us. And I wish you all the best. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe, like, let me know in the comments what you would appreciate more of in these videos. And hopefully I will see you all soon with your horoscope. And happy birthday to all the August Leos and August Virgos.